It is time once again to take a look at 10, count them 10, Magic the Gathering cards that are all common, and see if any of these common cards are good enough to be played in the Pauper format or not, the format where you can only play commons. It's common knowledge. That's what we do here. So let's start with our first card, which is Diplomatic Immunity. That is a pretty good card, as you can see that it costs $4.87. It is not because it's a fantastic Pauper card. This is a pretty good commander card, and that's where the price comes in. Let's read it first. 1 and a blue for an enchantment aura that enchants a creature. It has Shroud. This enchantment has Shroud. And enchanted creature has Shroud. Shroud, if you aren't familiar, it says a permanent with Shroud can't be the target of spells or abilities. So this gives one of your creatures Shroud, protecting them from spells or abilities. But unlike, something like Lightning Greaves that also gives a creature Shroud, people can destroy the Lightning Greaves. People can target the Lightning Greaves and kill it. They can't target Diplomatic Immunity because it also has Shroud, and that's pretty darn good protection. What can you really do about it at that point? You can block the creature with something with bigger power and toughness, I guess. You can use some kind of board wipe, which would be something like a breath weapon or an Arms of Adar. But if your creature gets big enough, if your creature's like a 4/4 or something, those aren't really going to work on it either. Or you can force them to sacrifice. You force your opponent to sacrifice the card with Diplomatic Immunity on it when you're using like a Tithing Blade or an Extract the Confession. Those are really your only ways at that point. But if you want to just completely stop a red deck from messing with one of your creatures, or if you want to stop black targeted removal from messing with your creatures, this is a pretty decent way of doing it. It kind of turns any creature that it's on into a bogle. That's not bad. It is a little slow, though. 2 mana, this does not have flash speed, so it's not really a protection spell. It's just protection once it's on. It can be really good. It could be. You throw this on a Cryptic Serpent, and your opponent kind of just doesn't have an answer for it. But I still don't love it. It's a very slow card, both to get it onto the table. I know it's only 2 mana, but you have to have a creature worthy of putting it on in the first place, and that's going to cost you more mana. There aren't a ton of those creatures in the format that are just a big, scary threat that you have to deal with right away. You can eventually get there with some cards. Writhing Chrysalis can eventually get big and scary. A Maelstrom Colossus starts big and scary, but that is, fewer and further between. This is a format that is a lot of small creatures for little value, and you really don't need a Diplomatic Immunity on most of those. So it's great to throw on a commander because it'll stop your opponents with messing with it. But in terms of Pauper, this just doesn't quite do what it needs to do because it's just a different format with different priorities. And it's still a cool card, though. I really like this card. I do have a copy of this card because it is great in Commander. Well, let's go for a 2.5, I think, for the Pauper format. Usable, perfectly fine, but not particularly exciting. Obscura Storefront. I don't think we've done these lands before, but these are kind of cool. Obscura Storefront is a land that says when this land enters, you sacrifice it. When you do, search your library for a basic Plains, Island, or Swamp card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle, and you gain 1 life. So we've seen gain lands before that are dual type, or they're not typed, but they can make 2 different colors of mana. Those lands are okay. This can fix, though, in a way that those cards can't, because it can grab you 3 different colors instead of a dual land that can make 2 different colors. So you are, having some pros and cons to each one of these. But this is kind of a fetch land that, just instantly will put in a land tapped. But it can be any of those lands tapped, and it still gains you the life. Those can be kind of cool. We did see this take over Standard for a bit. A while ago, there was a combo that you could do by bringing a bunch of lands into play, and then those lands would turn into, it was, what was it? It was like a Nissa card that had a landfall ability, and these things would guarantee 2 landfalls, and so you'd get to do crazy stuff with them, and you bring all the lands back, and then you just have a billion lands, and then you play a card that just burns the opponent out. So that was a thing in Standard for a while. It kind of sucked because it just took a long time to do on Arena, but it was a way to win. In Pauper, these don't really see play. They could, I guess, if you're going for more of a life gain theme. It's kind of nice to have life gain on your lands. But I think you'd probably just end up playing the dual color lands, the gain lands instead, because those just give you a little bit more flexibility than these do in terms of the colors that you are being able to make at any one time. So Obscura Storefront and the other cards like it from Streets of New Capenna, you're okay. I'm going to give you something like a 7.2, but in terms of lands, I think we can do better. But 7.2 is quite high because these lands are inherently playable. But I say most of the really good lands are going to get something like 8s and 9s. So 7.2 is actually not that great for a land, but it's still a pretty solid card all around. Derange Assistant is 1 and a blue for a 1/1 human wizard. You can tap it to mill a card and add a colorless, which is kind of interesting. That is, that's 2 mana towards your Tolarian Terror, right? Potentially. You tap this, you mill a card. That's, if it's an instant or sorcery, it takes your Tolarian Terror down 1, and then it adds a mana that you can spend on the Tolarian Terror. Now, it's a colorless, so you aren't going to be able to just pay the cost of a Tolarian Terror. You still need the blue mana to do that. But it's kind of interesting. It's also just a 1/1 that can end up blocking for you later in the game. It doesn't mill enough cards to really matter in Terror, and I don't really think it goes much of anywhere else. So I think overall this is kind of nothing. But it's a cool idea. I can dig the idea. It's a little bit like a Milliken, right? Isn't that the colorless version? Milliken? Yeah, mill a card out of colorless. The difference is this is a 0/1 and any deck can play it. And this is a 1/1. Like, do you really care about the 1 power for this? Because you're mostly just going to be tapping it all the time to add the mana. I guess it's a human wizard. Human wizard is probably better than construct, but also Milliken is not available in Pauper, so I guess there's your problem. There's your problem right there. But I don't think Milliken would really make a big deal in Pauper either, so I'm not inclined to give this thing much. Let's go with a 2.6. I still kind of like the mill. I like a mana dork in that way. I think you can do some kind of cool things with this, but it's nothing special. Toxic Nim, 4 and double black for a 4/1 Phyrexian zombie with infect. Okay. And you can pay a single black to regenerate this creature. That's scary. That can be pretty scary. You read 6 mana 4/1 and you go, ooh, that's bad, right? But a 6 mana 4/1 that is kind of unkillable, okay. And also one that is either going to give your opponent poison counters or just give -1/-1 counters to anything that blocks it. Plus it regenerates itself. Like that's pretty darn solid. Ooh. I kind of dig that. The worst part, though, is that when you play this, you probably are just getting to 6 mana. Because it takes a while to get to 6 mana. But let's say you've done that. You get to 6 mana, you play this, and then your opponent lava darts it or bolts it or whatever. You don't have that 7th mana to be able to regenerate at that turn. So it does require scary turns, or it requires you to play even on a later turn. And at that point, if you're playing it on turn 7, God, that's turn 7. You might be dead before that. I think we just have more efficient infect cards and poison counter cards in general. But if this thing gets on the table, it can be pretty scary. So I do want to respect it a little bit that way. I think we can give this thing a 2.9. It's a tough mana cost. Black has ways of making some big mana pretty quickly, but even in the Pauper format, like Dark Rituals and things like that. But I still don't think this is necessarily the thing you want to ramp into if you have that in black. It's okay though. It's okay. Ninja's Kunai is a single mana of any color. And you get an artifact equipment that has equipped creature has pay a mana, tap and sacrifice Ninja's Kunai, and Ninja's Kunai deals 3 damage to any target, and it equips for 1. We've seen it's Shuriken, right? Shuriken's the card I'm thinking of. Shuriken, yeah, which can tap and unattach and deal 2 damage to. This only does it to a creature. That's interesting. That creature's controller gains controller shuriken unless it was unattached by a ninja. Wow, that's interesting. Not exactly what I remembered shuriken being, but I guess that's true. So kunai is a little similar to shuriken in that, again, it's a throwing weapon in that way. But this one gets sacrificed. So you only get to do this once. You got to pay 3 mana overall to do this. 1 to get it on the table, 1 to attach it, and 1 to throw it. It does through its 3 damage to any target, so it is 3 mana for 3 damage. So it kind of is just 3 mana for a lightning bolt. And this is a format that has lightning bolt for 1 mana. You can pay this in installments, though, over the turns. I wish this gave some sort of benefit, though. I wish it gave, +1/+0 or something to make it worth it to have it on the creature in the first place. I don't know. Maybe that would be bad. Maybe it'd be. I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying, but I feel like I want it to do a little bit more because now it just feels like I'm literally paying 3 mana to deal 3 damage to any target, and I would just play the lightning bolt at that point. This is a lot of hoops to jump through, and you don't even get to keep the thing. I guess Leon and Squire or something is able to bring this back, but now you're just paying even more amounts of mana that you didn't have to pay. I don't particularly like this, and I'm going to give it a 2.1. Phantom Flock is, let's look at the Judgment version. How about that? Yeah, there you go. It's 3 and double white for a 0/0 bird, soldier, spirit with flying. And this creature enters with 3 +1/+1 counters on it. If damage would be dealt to this creature, prevent that damage and remove a +1/+1 counter from this creature. You're spending 5 mana on a 3 power or a 3/3 flyer. 5 mana for a 3/3 flyer, which can then, if it gets damaged in any way, through combat or through a lightning bolt or something, then it becomes a 2/2 flyer. And then if it happens again, you get a 1/1 flyer. Then if it happens again, you lose the counter and you have to sacrifice this guy. I don't like it. I don't like 5 mana for a 3/3 flyer that then gets potentially worse as the game continues. I think that's kind of bad. I guess you can proliferate onto this guy and keep building up the counters. Maybe it just becomes a really tough blocker at that point that you can just keep up. And maybe you can outlive whatever your opponent's doing and then be able to swing in for big damage at some point. I think it's a bit of a pipe dream. I don't think this is a very good card. I love the art. I do love the card generally, but I don't think it's good enough for the Pauper format. I'm going to give this thing a 1.7. I think it's mostly a trap if you try to play this card. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay. Let's keep on rolling to our next card, which is Sage Eye Carrier for 4 and a white. You get a 1/5 bird warrior with flying, and it also morphs for 3 and a white. This is only from Khans of Tarkir. I didn't remember that morph was even in Khans of Tarkir, but I guess I wasn't really playing then. So morph says you can pay 4 mana, or sorry, morph is you can cast this creature face down as a 2/2 creature for 3 mana, and then you can turn it face up for its morph cost at any time. It's like a free action that's even like outside of instant speed, which is kind of crazy. 3 mana 2/2s are not very good, but just the morph creatures generically are. That's what all morph creatures are. So you are getting something, I guess. It makes it a little modal in that way. Hey, I've always got a 3 mana 2/2, but then if you flip it over, you got to pay another 4 mana. So now you've put 7 mana into it for a 1/5 flyer. I guess it kind of blocks anything in the air, but oof, I don't want to pay 7 mana for that. I don't want to pay 5 mana for that. I don't think this is a very good card, and I think this is really, really just bad. I have nothing good to say about this card. I think we can go with a 1.3. This might be one of the worst cards we've seen in a while. I already don't love morph cards. I think they. I think it's in the same way that something like Foretell kind of just gives your opponent a pretty good idea of what you're playing because there are so few of these that are playable in the format at all that they can just have an idea of, okay, you play these colors. There's like 2 Foretell cards you might use in the same way that you go. There might be 2 morph cards that you potentially would use in the format. So it is kind of just giving up information to your opponent. Now, I think your opponent's going to be extremely surprised if you flip over Sage Eye Harrier, but they'd be surprised because why would you put such a bad card in your deck? Not a surprise of, oh, wow, I can't believe you had that. I'd be like, oh, wow, I can't believe you play that. So bad card. Don't like it at all. Brothers of Fire, we did this recently. I love these little dudes. Look at these dorks. But the card's not very good, but we've talked about it before. Orcish Vandal is 1 and a red for a 1/1 Orc Warrior. You can tap it and sacrifice an artifact, and this creature deals 2 damage to any target. That could be okay. You know, if you are able to just keep on making artifacts and keep tapping this guy to just keep chipping away at an opponent. I mean, that can be hard to deal with. I know he's a 1/1, so it's relatively easy to pick him off, but like, I don't know. This seems all right to me. There's a deck I'm actually brewing up right now that's like a red-black artifacts deck, and it probably should just splash blue, and it probably should just become a Grixis a Grixis Affinity deck. But the idea is that you just put a lot of artifacts on the table. But it's also kind of a burn deck, so this guy kind of works with it, and that I have a bunch of spare artifacts on the field that I aren't really burning things. That's kind of interesting. I don't hate it. I think you probably just end up having a lot of better options to play, but I do kind of like it. I'm going to give this thing a 3.4. That's a pretty good score by comparison. Enslaved Dwarf is a single red mana for a 1/1 dwarf. You can pay a red, sacrifice this creature, and target black creature gets +1/+0 until and gains first strike until end of turn. That's very narrow, really narrow. So you have to be playing Rakdos, at least. I guess you could play like Mardu or something, but you have to at least be playing Rakdos. You got to pay for this thing. Pay for a 1/1. It's already kind of whatever, but you have to pay again. If it was just the sacrifice the creature, which is already losing quite a bit, like you paid 1 and now you're losing that 1/1. But now I'm paying an additional 1 and still sacrificing the creature, and it's very narrow for what this effect goes on. It only hits black creatures, and first strike is fine with the little power boost. But wow, this isn't good. I'm going to give this a 1.7. I don't like that. Art's really cool, though. And our last official card of the day, pretty good one. Spider Manifestation, 1 and a hybrid Gruul mana, so red or green, for a 2/2 Spider Avatar with Reach, and you can tap it to add red or green, but whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater, you untap this creature. This is pretty good. This shows up in the red storm decks that we've been seeing develop a little bit more as some sets have come out. This is a really strong card for it because those decks play a lot of cards like Big Score and Seething Song and other things like that that are big enough spell. Seething Song, is that the one I'm thinking of? Seething Song is only 3 mana, but I think it still does get played in there because it just generates more mana. And the idea is here that you're kind of playing red-green familiars, so you're getting some cost reduction cards that make your red spells cheaper, This is a mana dork that then becomes very repeatable if you keep playing big spells, which if you're playing things like Big Score, that will untap this. But if Big Score is already giving you a couple of treasure tokens and Big Score is cheaper to cast because of your familiar options, then now you're generating even more mana, and this thing's untapping, so it's also generating mana, and it's allowing you to make these massive turns where you can potentially just wipe out an opponent with some incredible, storminess of playing a bunch of spells and then playing a spell that makes some giant tokens that then run over the opponent. I have faced Red Storm before, and I hate it. I don't think it's bad for the format exactly, but I don't particularly love combo decks, and this is a card that very much goes with combo decks. It also goes in other decks outside of the Red Storm. I think Gruul Ramp can play this card pretty effectively in that it's a ramp piece itself, but also that deck is playing big cards like Writhing Chrysalis and things like that. And so to have a card that can keep generating mana to keep making those big guys is all right. Plus it has reach, so it can block a fairy if it needs to. It also kind of has that pseudo vigilance in that I can tap this for mana, and as long as I'm playing a big spell, it untaps the guy, so it's back here ready to block if I need to. Cool things that you can do. The spider creature type also has a little bit of usefulness, especially with Marvel Spider-Man that added a bunch of spider-specific cards. This one's okay. This one is okay. I will give this thing a 6.5. That's a hell of a score for a card. Definitely playable in Pauper. Let's do a bonus card, which will be Hitchclaw Recluse. Now, this is not a very good spider in comparison. 2 and a green for a 1/4 spider with reach. That's not very good. It does block a lot of stuff, but 3 mana for this is a real clunker. I don't particularly like this. I think we could go for like a 1.6. Yeah, I think 1.6. Even that's probably a little too high, but we'll stick with it. Let's do another bonus card and do something a little better. Facet Reader is 1 and a blue for a 1/2 human wizard. You can pay 1, tap it to draw a card, and then discard a card. It's a worse merfolk looter. I mean, it's a 1/2. It's a human wizard. I guess those are better creature types than merfolk, but merfolk looter just loots without paying the mana every turn. I know it's a 1/1, but ugh, gross. I'll give this a 2, and I don't want to end on that one either. We got to get a better card than that. Pilfered Plans. That seems like a better card to me. 1 in Dimir, so a 1 blue black for a sorcery. Target player mills 2 cards. You draw 2 cards. Sure. 3 mana draw 2. Like, that's a divination. We don't love those, but you also force a player to mill a couple cards. It's not great, but it's better than some of the trash we saw in the last handful of cards. Yeah, this is okay. It's not great, but it's okay. This can get a solid 2.4. But like I said, it's not a 1, so it's better than those last couple. We'll end on that one, I suppose. Thanks for joining. We'll see you on the next one. See you.